the Andalusian Riding School, and the wines known simply as Jerez, sherry. Jerez is also the home of the Spanish Grand Prix. Last week in Portugal, Alain Prost's title charge for Ferrari was derailed when teammate Nigel Mansell slid wide and nearly put Prost in the wall. Mansell redeemed himself to the fans by coming back to pass Ayrton Senna for the victory, but Prost's post-race smile was forced. Today in Spain, Prost must win to have any chance of keeping his world championship. Thus far, Senna has not been his only obstacle. ESPN, the world leader in motorsports coverage, presents Speed World. There is rain expected in Spain, but with any luck, it will fall mainly on the plain and not on the racetrack as we await what could be the deciding race of the 1990 Formula One World Championship, the Grand Prix of Spain. Hello again, everyone. I'm Bob Varsha. Welcome to Jerez, or Jerez if you prefer the local dialect. There are many scenarios that could unfold in the minutes to come, but the fact of the story is this. Ayrton Senna of Brazil leads Alain Prost of France by 18 points for the World Championship. With 2 races remaining and 9 points to win in each, should they be 18 points apart at the end of the day, Senna will claim his 2nd World Driving Championship. His McLaren teammate Gerhard Berger looks safe in 3rd, while Prost's Ferrari teammate Nigel Mansell is a part of a good scrap for 4th place. There is also a manufacturer's championship that could be claimed today. McLaren Honda leads Ferrari by 33 points coming in, with a maximum of 30 to be scored in the races to follow today. A good showing for McLaren could earn them their 3rd straight manufacturer's title. With me once again is our regular Formula One analyst David Hobbs. And David, coming into this race, Ferrari is hardly a united team when they need to be.
You could say that again, Bob. This has been what one could say a sore week for Ferrari. After last week's start at Estoril, Alain Prost got absolutely fumed up over the weekend and really lashed out in the papers on Tuesday in France and Italy, in fact threatening to leave the team right there and then. Well, that all seems to have been smoothed over, although I just feel that's paper over the cracks. They had a press conference this week, and Nigel Mansell had his say, blasted the press in general, and then paid incredibly glowing tribute to one of the teams in racing, not Ferrari, McLaren. So that went down well with Ferrari as well. He got his parting shot yesterday afternoon by saying, "I'm glad that Alan's on the front row because now he can make his own start and not worry about me." Alongside Alain Prost on the front row for his 50th pole out of 108 starts, a mind-blowing statistic, is Ayrton Senna. The one thing all the drivers are agreed on here is that it's very difficult to pass on this circuit, so the first lap is going to be absolutely crucial. Alain Prost has gone so far as to say that he doesn't think this circuit is suitable for Formula One anymore, and this was illustrated graphically on Friday when Martin Donnelly had a huge crash at about 155 miles an hour and completely tore his car apart, breaking his legs and other bones in the process, but he's making good progress at the moment.
In fact, Martin Donnelly was operated on Friday night. Doctors say his prognosis is favorable. It is harvest time in the vineyards around Jerez, and in the timeless tradition of sherry making, the grapes are cut by hand, destined for the vintages that will grace the tables of the world. ESPN Speed World coverage of the Formula One Grand Prix of Spain is brought to you by Mobil 1 Synthetic Motor Oil. Isn't your car worth the extra protection? By Budweiser, Beechwood Age. For that clean, crisp taste, this Bud's for you. By Pirelli Tires. Years of sherry are maturing in the casks of Jerez, but we must turn now to the business of racing. And we'll be back in a moment to bring you the starting lineup. To filter into the racetrack, a surprisingly small crowd considering the importance of the race that they are about to witness. With that, let's take a look at the starting lineup for the Spanish Grand Prix. On the pole for the 50th time in his career, the series points leader Ayrton Senna of Brazil in the McLaren Honda, 1.9 seconds under his track record. Next to him, Alain Prost of France. It doesn't get any better than this. The Ferrari next to the McLaren, Prost fastest in the warm-up by 1.1 seconds. On row 2, Nigel Mansell of Great Britain, the winner for Ferrari a week ago. Next to him, French sensation Jean Alesi in the Tyrrell. He'll be heading for Ferrari next year, a spectacular qualifying performer. On row 3, Gerhard Berger of Austria, the second McLaren Honda, part of a group of 5 drivers who qualified within a tenth of a second. Next to him, Riccardo Patrese of Italy in the Williams Renault. On row 4, to the inside, Thierry Boutsen of Belgium in the second Williams car, but he has announced a 2-year deal with Ligier for next year. Next to him, Nelson Piquet of Brazil in the Benetton, who took a verbal shot from countryman Senna after a very close shave in qualifying. Row 5 will be Sandro Nannini of Italy to the inside in the Benetton Ford, the first man slower than last year's pole time. Next to him, Derek Warwick of Great Britain in the Lotus. Give him extra marks for courage, returning to that car after Donnelly's accident. Row 6 will be Pierluigi Martini of Italy in the Minardi to the inside. To the outside, Maurizio Gugelmin of Brazil in the Leighton House with Judd V8 power. Row 7 will be Philippe Ayot of France, apparently out of a job with the Ligier team for 1991. Next to him will be Satoru Nakajima of Japan, over the flu that held him out of last weekend's Portuguese Grand Prix. He, of course, is in the Tyrrell. On row 8 will be Japanese driver Aguri Suzuki in the Larousse, next to Emanuele Pirro of Italy in the Dallara. Row 9 will be Andre de Cesaris of Italy and Frenchman Eric Bernard. Row 10, Ivan Capelli of Italy and countryman Nicola Larini. Row 11, Olivier Griard of France in the Ocella, next to the AGS of Gabriele Tarquini. On row 12, I make that, Martin Donnelly was to have started in the Lotus, but due to his crash, Yannick Belmas of France moves up in the AGS. Next to him, Stefano Modena of Italy in the Brabham. Alone on row 13, Michele Alboreto of Italy in the Footwork Arrows car. Formula One rules do not allow broken cars to be replaced on the grid. As a result, among those who missed the cut, David Brabham misses the race by 2 1/1000ths of a second. Paolo Barilla of Italy, Bernd Schneider of Germany, and Bertrand Gachot of Belgium also failed to make the field. Those who didn't get out of Friday morning's pre-qualifying session, Brazilian Roberto Moreno and Italians Claudio Langes and Bruno Giacomelli. That is the field for today's race. David, how about a few words about the racetrack?
Well, at 2.6 miles with 16 corners, it's very, very busy. Extremely hard on the brakes, this circuit in particular. Lots of gear changes per lap, over 30, and a good bit of elevation change and not too bumpy. But as Alan Prost has already pointed out, there's a couple of corners here where the Ferrari instrumentation was showing them developing nearly 5 Gs during cornering, so it's hard work for the drivers.
And the conditions aren't going to help much. Very warm here in Spain, 86 degrees and expected to get hotter, 73% humidity, very light wind. The flag's not even moving as we await the start. Very little chance of rain, but they say there will be a chance throughout the day. We'll take a quick time out. When we come back, John Bizignano will give you his final update of the preparations for the Spanish Grand Prix, and we'll turn them loose. Stay with us. You're looking live from a helicopter circulating above the start-finish straightaway here in Jerez de la Frontera in Spain. And it is a very short straightaway. The drivers to a man tell you there is very little room to rest on this racetrack. On the front row will be McLaren and Ferrari. This is the McLaren, however, of Gerhard Berger, who starts back on the third row. We'll give you a look at Alain Prost. This is Nigel Mansell's car, make that. Everyone else keeps a little marketing decal on the chin of their helmet, but true to his nation, Nigel wears the British flag. 30 seconds until the cars roll off. Both of the Ferraris and both of the McLarens will be carrying on-board cameras, so if the technology all works, we should have some spectacular pictures. Ironically, just 1 year ago, the field was reversed. Alain Prost came in with a massive lead in points over Ayrton Senna of Brazil, who had to win the race in order to keep his title hopes alive. He did that from flag to flag. Now it is Prost's turn to come from behind. The field pulls away, and as they do, let's get down to the pit lane to get final updates on the mechanical condition of the cars. Here's John Bizignano.
Thank you very much, Bob. Actually, an awful lot of work went on in between this morning's warm-up and when the cars have just left the grid. Let me bring you up to date. Alain Prost was fastest in warm-up, and that gave a lot of concern to McLaren. We asked Ron Dennis what they did to the cars, and he said, we gave them a great deal of thought. Obviously, he didn't want to tell them exactly what the changes were, but we did catch them putting some spacers in the rear suspension to Berger's car out on the grid. Mansell, he have changed the motor. He had trouble with acceleration in the motor that they used this morning. That is a brand new motor in that car. Alain Prost, A-OK, hardly any work done whatsoever out on the grid. The Williams, the Patrese, A-OK, Boutsen, another changed motor for the young man from Belgium. Benetton, both cars, okay, they were doing a lot of work in the cockpit. I think mostly they were trying to get the fluid systems working that will be aiding the drivers at these high temperatures throughout the Grand Prix. Onboard drinking bottles and so forth. Tyrrell, John Alesi, another motor, and he actually switched to the T car. They put the spare motor in the race car, but then he just wasn't happy with it. He had done some laps in the T car, and he is in their test car or the T car. Nakajima in the other Tyrrell, he had all the brakes changed. Very hot here, and of course a heavy braking circuit. Leighton Hout, Spugelman, another motor change. I can't remember when we've had so many motors changed between warm-up and practice. Capelli okay. Tarquini went out in his race car. The gearbox blew up before he got to the first corner, thank heavens. And he came back and got in his spare car in time to take the start. Also Modena in his spare car. Now, the tire situation, most people have gone out on the harder compound tires for both Pirelli and Goodyear. And let me show you why. The entire circuit here has been covered with a fine sand, and this is just like an emery board going across those tires. We could have for sure one stop by everyone and possibly two stops. I think we're about over 90 degrees here in the pit lane. Let me show you what that does to tires. Here's the bottom of my shoe, guys. I've lost 3 pieces of my shoe, and I'm about ready to lose my 4th. But that's not going to slow us down. We're going to try and get everything covered down here. An awful lot of action in the pit lane here in Spain, and a great race coming up.
Well, Biz will now be known henceforth as Hotfoot.
Well, also he's wearing slicks, of course, for the first time this year, which is a good sign. Looking for some good times out of him in Japan and Australia.
We cannot overemphasize the importance of the first corner. If there is an incident, we will let you know about it. Other than that, we will be quiet and allow you to enjoy the sound of these engines as they rev to some 13,000 RPM. For the second week in a row, there are 25 and not 26 cars on the grid after the accident to Martin Donnelly. You have to wonder what is going through the minds of Senna and Prost, and behind them, Mansell and Alesi, and behind them, Nigel Mansell and Riccardo Patrese. The field comes to a stop. The clean line on the racetrack is to the right of your screen, where Prost will start the Ferrari. Enjoy the race. We'll be with you in a moment. Alesi locking him up and spinning into the dirt. He'll have a tough time getting out of there. Alesi made contact, I think, with Riccardo Patrese's car, drove him on the grass. We have other cars on the grass in the background. Patrese in the middle, following his teammate Terry Boutsen. Up front, it is McLaren, followed by Ferrari.
Well, I think that Patrese must have tried to get around the outside of Alesi. He wasn't having any of it, and both and Alesi certainly came to grief.
Our pictures are coming, and Alesi is out of the car. Out of the car. Oh. What a disappointment. Nevertheless, the race will continue since the car is well off the racetrack. Here's another look, courtesy of our pictures being brought to you from Spanish television. Good start for Prost, who tucks in immediately behind the McLaren.
There you see Patrese pulling up on the outside. And Alesi is squeezed over by Berger, very much squeezed over.
Oh, they made contact with Patrese's car. You don't do that in open-wheel vehicles. Then he got up on the bumps, locked up the wheels, came together with Berger again, and that was it for young Jean Alesi.
Well, Berger literally just shouldered Alesi aside. Here you see it again. Patrese and Boots and his teammate getting very close together.
Had he not gone off the racetrack, we could have had a great carambolage, a pile-up in the first corner. Nevertheless, we are going forward. 73 laps scheduled. Here is the end of the first. Senna with Prost right there.
From the way he went in the warm-up this morning, and from the way the Ferraris went last week in Estoril and how they were expected to go here in Spain, and also in 3 weeks' time in Japan, if Prost gets around Senna at this early stage, Senna would be in deep trouble.
Quickly down the grid, it is Senna, Prost, Mansell, Berger, Boutsen, Patrese, then Nelson Piquet and Sandro Nannini, team by team by team. Warwick, Martini, Alio, Gugelmin, Suzuki, Bernard, Nakajima, and De Cesaris. Another look at the start from Spanish television.
Watch Berger, third back there, made a really good start. Oh, funny sort of replay.
Not that good.
Here he comes over, nudges Alesi. Alesi nudges Patrese, who jumps over the curb but manages to save it, and poor old Alesi is pushed out of the race. Really, you can't lay any blame on Alesi for that at all.
But he is the victim thereof.
Kind of one of those racing accidents. Berger desperate to make up a bit of tardy practice back there in the third row. Unlike him or the McLaren to be that far back, and that looks like
one of the Delaras is off as well. No, that's Emanuele Pirro's car. The 21 Dallara of Emanuele Pirro. So we have at least 2 cars out. Working lap 2. And Prost right there. Very tight hairpin here, and then a launch onto the front straightaway.
This is the corner you've got to get right if you want to do some overtaking, because coming into turn 1 is probably the best place here to do it.
Cross takes a look to the inside, then pulls outside again. David, knowing that you're going to have to change tires sooner or later, is there perhaps a bit of an incentive to work them hard in the early going here?
Well, I think also that Prost is an absolute pass master at making other people drive their tires off their car, but Senna seems to have picked up quicker than most people the art of self-preservation or tire preservation, and he and Prost are the absolute masters of that game, really head and shoulders above the rest of the field at that particular art. But I think Prost is really putting the pressure on here to try and make Senna use his tires up. I think that Prost feels that the McLaren is a weaker chassis than the Ferrari, and that if he can just push Senna enough, the weakness in that chassis will do the job for him on the tires. But Senna's good at keeping it all together.
Nigel Mansell begins to creep up to the first two. Berger still a little bit of drift, about a half second or so. There you see the McLaren, followed by the two Ferraris.
Well, I'm sure that, of course, Senna himself doing a lot of pace setting here. He's only going to drive absolutely as fast as is necessary.
Here is the corner where Martin Donnelly had his accident. He went straight off to the tires on the right.
This is the corner where the Ferrari is so quick through those two corners.
Pulling 5 Gs, or actually 4.8, according to Alain Prost. There is Nigel Mansell. Lots of rumors swirling around the Englishman this weekend. Many people in the pit lane believe he has rethought his retirement, which he announced at Britain this year, and that we may see Nigel back in one of his old teams.
And that is in place of Thierry Boutsen at Williams. Thierry having already decided just this week to go and drive for Ligier next year for a 2-year contract.
One of those years he will drive with the 12-cylinder Lamborghini engines, the next year with the Renault teams that he's come to know at Williams. You're on board with Mansell.
These checkered curbs here have a sting in the tail, because they're all, every one of those checkers is a little rumble strip facing the way the driver's going, admittedly, but when the drivers get on there, the old camera goes through rather a bad period.
You can see they're scalloped, and that is a significant drop. They're about 3 inches high, the troughs to the top of the next bump. You could easily turn an ankle just walking on one of those, so you can imagine what they do to a car's suspension. Now you're aboard with Alain Prost in the number 1 Ferrari, looking ahead at the back of the leader, Ayrton Senna.
This is coming down to the corner where Donnelly went off, into 5th gear. Little bit of a lift. Little bit of a lift there. As the race progresses and the fuel goes out of these cars, they'll be going to that corner flat out. And, of course, when they're coming to the end of their second set of tyres. Unlikely to push it that hard this early.
You saw 2 different lines through that corner, and we'll be seeing that all day long. We'll take a quick time out. Ayrton Senna is your leader in the Spanish Grand Prix, followed by Alain Prost, Nigel Mansell, and Gerhard Berger. Working lap 6 of a scheduled 73. You're riding with the world champion, Alain Prost, in a car that he drives arguably better than any man in the world. Of course, there's only one other man in the world who gets that opportunity right now, Nigel Mansell. Up ahead, arguably the fastest man ever in Formula One, Ayrton Senna of Brazil in a McLaren. Watch the Ferrari drivers and note that Alain Prost's hands never leave the steering wheel. The shifting is done by a series of butterfly levers on the steering wheel, as opposed to someone like Senna up ahead who has to drop that right hand down to a shift lever mounted on the side of the monocoque to change gears.
We're coming to down to the turn where Donnelly went off. These are 2 fast right-hand sweeps in 5th gear. Lift off both times there, but they're doing about 150 down into the slowest corner here, which is the hairpin onto the pits. Down to 2nd, I would imagine here. 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th in their case, of course. Down to 3rd here. 4th, back to 3rd. Quite a tight one, this, but very important, because we've now got a very fast left-right stretch coming up. Very big G-forces through these 2 corners here and here. I imagine their machines or their instruments are showing some pretty high levels there. Up to the chicane. This will be a second gear left-right flick. Bit of a bump in the middle, just right there. Up. Prost case probably fifth before coming down to second for this very slow hairpin here. This is where he ran into the back of Schneider in practice.
That shot you saw in the top of our program was Bernd Schneider, who was lapping slowly while Alain Prost was overtaking on a qualifying run, and Prost just ran into the back of him. Let's get a quick update now from the pit lane with John.
Jean Alesi was met by about 14 of us pit reporters, and he waved us all off. Last week we saw him crying. This week he was absolutely furious. I've never seen him so mad. He's quite a gentle person, actually. He was absolutely mad about what happened to him in turn 1. Emmanuel Pirot in the Dilara, his throttle cable stuck wide open. That is why he is out 2 DNFs so far here in Spain.
There are more coming, John. I think on our in-car camera I saw one of the Brabhams off in the trash off of one corner, and we just saw a replay from Spanish television of Gabriele Tarquini bringing the AGS to a stop. That was his backup car. His original car broke on the reconnaissance lap. He sprinted back to the pits, got into his backup machine, but it too is apparently out of the race.
The other apparent thing here is that these three are pulling away very fast now from Gerhard Berger, who is being pushed extremely hard by Boots of Patrese and Piquet, who are right on top of him. So he is now holding up that train for 4th spot on.
We are working lap 8 as you look at Nigel Mansell. It is Senna, Prost a half-second back, Mansell 1.1 behind Prost. There you see the Brabham I spoke about, the number 8 car of Stefano Modena, whose Spanish Grand Prix is over. Stefano has announced his engagement this weekend. His girlfriend's name is Sveva, and she is a princess of Rome, a real princess.
Prost now really putting the pressure onto Senna, and the second McLaren of Berger falling way out of this fray. Nigel Mansell no doubt biding his time. This is a hot race, it's a hard race. It's no good overdriving either yourself or your equipment early on, because that's just going to lead to fatigue and a lack of effort later on. Plus, we're all going to have to make a pit stop somewhere, so there's a bit of cat and mouse going on at the moment until that first stop.
That far-away shot gives you some feeling, I think, for the speed these cars are traveling, and you see them against the scale of the track far below the helicopter. It is Senna as we complete lap 8. There is Alain Prost, desperately in need of points. He must score some points today, and he must finish ahead of Ayrton Senna. Otherwise, the title will go to the Brazilian.
I'm going to say he's certainly got to score points, but he needs to score more than Brazilian, doesn't he, of course?
Now, because you can only count your top 11 finishes in Formula 1, Senna already has 11. Prost, behind him in the red Ferrari, has 10. Senna must finish first or second to score 9 points or 6 points, respectively. Otherwise, he has to give up a third-place finish, which is worth 4. So effectively, if he doesn't finish first or second, he nets no points and will remain with 78 points. Prost, on the other hand, can keep all of the points he earns today, and he has some 5th and 6th place finishes he can drop later on. So Prost is in a position to close ground today if he can score ahead of Senna. Senna is your leader, working lap 9. Prost, Mansell, Berger, Boutsen, and Patrese will be back to Spain in a moment.
Japan, I think.
I'd have to say Budapest.
Brazil. Italy.
I think maybe the France.
I think USA. Brazil.
I think in the past was Germany.
In Italy, it's not bad.
I think Argentina has the most beautiful women.
Brazil, maybe? Australia.
And Ireland has the best women.
The most beautiful movies here in Spain. Brazil. Italy.
Oh, it's got to be America.
Germany. In January. And Spanish, Portugal, America, Brazilian, Japanese, everywhere. Not abroad.
And Sandro Nannini wins the Diplomacy Award. You can ask a question of a Formula 1 driver. Send your question to Ask Phoenix next year. We'll get those cards and letters on their way. Here in Spain, we are working lap number 11 of 73. There is your leader, Ayrton Senna of Brazil. Behind him, Alain Prost, Nigel Mansell, Gerhard Berger, Terry Boutsen, Ricardo Patrese, Nelson Piquet, Sandro Nannini, Derek Warwick, Pierluigi Martini, Philippe Ayot, Maurizio Gugelmin, Aguri Suzuki, Eric Bernard, Satoru Nakajima, Ivan Capelli, Andrea De Cesaris, Nicola Larini, Olivier Guillard, and Yannick Dalmas.
And these two have suddenly pulled out over 2 seconds on Nigel, which was a bit odd, and they're still nearly 6 seconds. As you can see, the full length of the front straight in front of Gerhard Berger, who is slipping backwards all the time.
11 laps are now complete. After an eventful start, let's get a comment on that from John Visignano in the pits.
Well, I think you saw on the replay that there was a lot of action up in turn one. The people in the middle of it were John Alesi, who lost. He has retired. Patrese and Berger. We've talked to the respective team managers, and they say, well, the cars will be checked over very quickly during the pit stops. But, of course, the problem is both of those cars don't seem to be quite up to their normal speed. So although there are no reports from their drivers of problems, they aren't operating at their maximum.
Alain Prost closing up on Ayrton Senna, and I think that's a little unusual, David. Prost has stated that following another car closely does not work well with the Ferrari aerodynamics. The front tires start to go off very quickly if you follow in the dirty air of a car up in pit.
Well, that's true. The whole car tends to suffer generally, overheats and so on, especially on a day like today, and you suck up all the rubber and dust that he's putting up, as well, of course, as the key thing is losing that aerodynamic efficiency. But I have to think that the Ferraris have their aerodynamics absolutely just right this year. They were so good last week in Estoril. They're good here, and maybe he can even afford to be that close and still have his car work pretty well.
Across the start-finish line they come, and Alain Prost cannot let this situation continue. He must get ahead of Ayrton Senna.
The corners here have all got names. This is Expo 92, which of course is going to be in Seville in 92. This is the Michelin corner. Not all the corners have got names. These are the S's. Look at Prost now, very close behind. He needs to really capitalize coming out of that last corner onto the pit straight. It's his best chance. But there are other places where he could sneak through. And this corner they're coming to, appropriate enough in the Sherry region, is called Dry Sack. This is where poor Alain Prost ran into the back of... Actually, Schneider, to give Schneider his due the other day, what happened was he went from third back into first instead of third to fourth on acceleration. So, of course, he stopped rather abruptly.
Coming down to the corner now, named for Spanish motorcycle champion Angel Nieto. To be followed by Peluqui, and then Ducados, where Martin Donnelly had his accident. And finally, a corner named to the late Enzo Ferrari. And I'll bet a lot of the drivers have a name for this corner. A first or second gear hairpin that leads onto the front straightaway.
Prost takes a wider entry into that corner than Senna, who tends to pinch his entry, but it doesn't seem to hurt his exit speed much. But there's no doubt about it that Prost is very quick through that Ducados, the two fast right-hand sweeps, notwithstanding the fact that he is very close behind Senna, which must be hurting his aerodynamics to a certain extent.
No change of the order since the first lap, virtually all the way through the pack. As we mentioned, a very difficult racetrack to pass on, so if you're running with somebody in a very equal car, you're going to have a terrible time trying to get around him. And you can bet that Ayrton Senna in that red and white McLaren is banking on it. John has more on this aerodynamic conundrum in the pits.
If you remember at the Italian Grand Prix where Derek Warwick had a horrific accident coming through Parabolica, what he said was the problem with the car was they got too close to one of the Leighton House cars, and it just wiped out all of his aerodynamics going into this very fast sweeping corner, and he ended up into the wall. There are several corners like that here. Now, Alain Prost seems faster to me in several places on the track, and you have a better vantage point, David, but he has to pull back a little bit to get clean air through these sweeping, very fast corners in Spain.
And there's no doubt about it, that's where he is fast. He's fast all the way down through those two, gets right up behind them coming into the hairpin here, the Enzo Ferrari hairpin, and for the first time takes that close line in behind Senna. Trying to snooker Senna there, but didn't work out.
You notice Senna goes right to the middle of the racetrack, not over to the left side of the driver's left, where most of them have been, setting up for this first corner. Senna slides right out into the middle of the track. I think they call that tactical drift.
Yeah. Both these drivers playing a waiting game, and of course Nigel Mansell just sitting behind them both, letting these two guys do all the work. He hasn't dropped significantly back at all, so he's right there ready to pick up where these two leave off if either of them should make the slightest bit of a mistake. And as we say, these three have pulled away over 7 seconds clear of Gerhard Berger in 4th spot now.
This is the 5th Spanish Grand Prix to be held in Jerez. No one has won this race and the World Championship in the same year. And a couple of years from now, it may move to Barcelona to join the Olympics. In downtown Jerez de la Frontera is the Andalusian Riding School. Actually, not so much to train riders as to train horses. The world-renowned and absolutely beautiful Andalusian stallions. It is a wonderful show. Coming up later tonight, same-day coverage of the NASCAR Winston Cup Series at the Tyson Holly Farms 400 at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific from North Wilkesboro, North Carolina. 16 points separate Dale Earnhardt and Mark Martin for the $1 million North Wilkesboro, North Carolina. We are in Jerez, Spain, watching the Spanish Grand Prix, working lap number 17 of 73 set. It is Ayrton Senna leading as he has since the green light over Alain Prost. Nigel Mansell remains 3rd. Gerhard Berger continues to slide back. He is 4th, but 7.2 seconds in arrears. Terry Boutsen and Ricardo Patrese, the Williams teammates, rolling along in tandem, followed by Nelson Piquet and Sandro Nannini, the Benetton teammates. Then Derek Warwick, Pierluigi Martini, and Philippe Ayot. Ayot will be leaving the Ligier team next year. He'll be replaced by Terry Boutsen. These two gentlemen, Senna and Prost, are confirmed in their contracts for next year. And we told you a story last week about some details of Senna's contract that had sneaked out or been leaked out, dealing with expenses for his private jet and a private motorhome at the racetrack and so forth. Ron Dennis, the McLaren team manager, came forward to say that that was all absolute rubbish and a story leaked by a certain famous foreign driver with the McLaren team, a world champion, who decided he would have some fun with the press, including those of us here at ESPN. Watch as they come off the corner, how the McLaren just jumps away from the Ferrari.
The Ferrari drivers, and of course all the McLaren drivers, have always said how much grunt and sheer horsepower the Honda engine has got down low. And of course, all racing engine designers and developers want to do is crank out that huge number at the top end. But to drive a racing engine, you need power as much as you can all through the range. You need torque as well as just sheer power. The thing has got to be drivable. I think that's one thing where Honda have been very, very successful in developing an engine that's given them all of the attributes you really want. And they had it in their 1.5-liter turbo engine as well.
Ron Dennis also made some remarkable comments about how Honda goes about preparing their engines. They test all year long, both in the laboratory on the test bench and in the race cars. They accumulate their data, and at the end of the year, they totally redesign their engine. They say the engine that they're using right now is worlds apart from the one they originally started with at the beginning of the year. They changed the alignment of the pistons. They changed the driving of the camshafts. A tremendous financial and manpower commitment to Formula One racing. They are coming with a 12-cylinder engine last year that they say already surpasses the 10-cylinder model in every aspect. John Bizignano has more.
It's not only power. The V10 of the Honda certainly has a little bit more point-to-point acceleration than the V12s of the Ferrari. But once you have all that power, you have to be able to get it to the ground. And this is where the McLaren chassis is certainly the best. The chassis and the rear suspension work together along with the rear wing to create the aerodynamics and the downforce. And once that accelerator goes through the floor, all of the power hits the road. Not every car can do that. They get wheel spin, and the drivers go nowhere. But Ayrton Senna's not having that problem here.
It is an amazing exercise in technology, putting together a Formula One car. Just over 1,100 pounds in weight, 700 horsepower, and it can do absolutely miraculous things.
They certainly do have good traction, but I do feel that in terms of overall chassis refinement, at the moment, the Ferrari is as good as the McLaren. And of course, Senna has got this big thing that he keeps on alluding to in various press conferences about this problem that we have with all these drivers always speak in this funny sort of jingo speak about the car. We have this problem. And when he was asked the other night, how was the problem, by a journalist, he went into a great long rambling answer about how they still had the problem, but they were hoping that it would be gone in their 1992 car. So, obviously he's not 100% happy with the chassis, but as John says, it certainly puts that 700 horsepower to the ground pretty well, and at the moment he's managing to stay in front of the Ferraris. The Ferraris have complained about lack of power, but I don't think, in fact, that they can complain about lack of power, but I don't think they are quite as drivable and quite as much torque and power across the range as the Honda.
Nigel Mansell drifts back a bit now. He is measured at 1.7 seconds behind Alain Prost with 19 laps complete. John, I think you have a comment to make about that power question?
Well, actually, yes. I agree totally that the Ferrari has a fabulous chassis, but the McLaren does really put the power down to the ground. David, do you not think that maybe the Tyrrell is the best chassis in Formula One for them to have the grid positions and the race positions that they're having with that V8? That has to be the best handling car out there. Just quickly, Tarquini is out with electrical problems. Modena was punted off, as he said to me, by Dalmas, and Nakajima spun off. The Tyrrell boys are packing up, and we're getting ready for some pit stops down here, folks.
Well, there's no doubt about it. The Tyrrell obviously is a very effective chassis. Harvey Postlethwaite got great depth of experience in Formula One, starting off with James Hunt way back in the middle 70s. And it's going to be very interesting to see what happens when they put this same V10 Honda engine in that chassis next year.
Let's take a quick time out before the pit stops begin. Of course, it also happens to have a guy like Alesi in your car who goes a car length deeper into any corner than anybody else does. We'll be back to Spain. Back live in Spain, where our leading duo of Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost have pulled away from the third place car, which is now Gerhard Berger. Nigel Mansell has come in, made his pit stop for tires. For passing the pit entrance, neither Senna nor Prost will stop. Here is another look at what happened when Nigel Mansell came in. Keep your eye on the foreground at the Williams crew, awaiting Ricardo Patrese.
And what's the Williams crew now?
That's how dangerous life can be in a Formula One pit lane. Here comes Gerhard Berger. You're watching live action. He is stopping from third place. John Bizignano is down there.
Gerhard Berger pulls the Honda McLaren into the pits perfectly. Very fast. He may have selected immediately the wrong gear and then put it into first gear. He's out of here along with Nannini just behind him. As you say, there's a very small pit road for a lot of people to be working in. The gear selection was something that Berger had a problem with about 3 races ago. He selected third gear for the first half second, then went out in first.
Well, pit stops are something that the McLaren team has found difficult throughout the year, but they have changed air wrenches, we are told, and as a result, having much more luck getting those wheels on and off quickly.
They probably spend more money and time on testing air wrenches than some teams spend on the car. That looks like one of the Roosters. That
is Eric Bernard.
Well, that's him out of the race.
So the attrition continues along with the action here in Spain.
LaRousse, of course, another big change coming up next year because they lose their V12 Lamborghini engine, and we haven't got any sort of word yet as to which engine they are going to have.
There's a replay of Bernard's LaRousse coming to a stop. He was running in 13th place at the time, well back. Apparently an electrical problem took away all drive.
Okay, now those two other leading cars, Mansell and Berger, both stopped on lap 20, which in a 73-lap race is pretty early to stop. They may be thinking of making 2 stops. Depends what tyre compound they put on. Maybe John will be able to find that out for us. Now there's Boutsen, of course, he must be in third
place, followed by Nelson Piquet in 4th. Boutsen 10.7 seconds. You saw the gap behind our leaders. A great piece of open racetrack. Senna pushing, but Prost there like a shadow.
It'll be interesting to see with their new tyres how much progress Berger and Mansell can make back to the field. Mansell now lying in 5th spot and Berger in 6th.
Whoop, quick glimpse of the pit. Here comes Pierluigi Martini. That must have been him exiting the Minardi pits. As we work lap 23, your order is Senna, Prost, Boutsen, Piquet, Mansell, followed by Derek Warwick, who has yet to stop. Gerhard Berger is back out in 7th spot, followed by Felipe Ayot, Sandro Nannini, Maurizio Gugelmin, and Aguri Suzuki.
There you see the film from the leader's car as he goes through that Palucci corner and down to the Ducata. This is where the drivers feel that barrier on the left should be a lot further back. Alboreto into the pit.
Kelly Alboreto. A lot of people speculating about his future with the Arrows team when that new Porsche engine comes online next year. When asked what he wants to do when the season was over, Alboreto says, "Go off and start testing the Porsche." And I hope he gets that opportunity. He's a neat guy.
He's certainly one of the nicest drivers in Formula One. And every dog has his day, and he was very quick at one stage.
Alboreto will come onto the racetrack right in the area of the third-place car of Terry Boutsen, with Nelson Piquet just behind him.
Is that Nigel Mansell coming back up to the field?
This is Mansell coming back along, running in 5th spot. Remember, he came back for a pit stop in 4th place in Portugal last week, and then came right back through the field, passed everybody, and won. There is Derek Warwick in the Lotus.
Well, now, Nigel Mansell has just done the fastest lap of the race at a 26.9, and Berger on his new tyres has done a 28.5, so a substantial difference in those 2 lap times for the cars which are similarly equipped with their new tyres.
Philippe Ayot has parked the Ligier in the gravel.
What's a surprise?
Up front, working lap 24 of 73, it is Senna, Prost, Boutsen, Piquet, Mansell. Alboreto is now a lap down. Now you're on board with Alain Prost looking ahead at the leader. You get the sense that there is perhaps a little con game going on here. Neither driver wants to pit.
No, dead right.
And it will become a battle of the pit crews. Both teams had very quick early stops. I'd give the edge to McLaren, who got Berger out faster than Ferrari was able to get Mansell out. And that could spell the difference in this race.
The gap between these two drivers staying at an official half a second, which it fluctuates up and down between that and maybe a second, and maybe even less as they go into some of these slow corners.
Okay, let's take a look now. We talked about the difference between the two cars. The Ferrari drivers, as you can see Prost there, able to keep both hands on the wheel as the engine shifts up and down. Now watch the right hand, the red glove of Ayrton Senna. Down it goes, and he's going through one of the tightest parts of the track here, the chicane. And watch, down it goes to shift again. And some of these shifts take place in the corners.
That's the problem. When you want to make the shift in the corner, it has to be a very quick hand move, whereas, of course, the little toggle switches on the Ferrari make that much simpler. And I'm sure that when Ferrari have got all the bugs out of that system, that the other top teams will certainly pick it up.
I mentioned earlier that the Spanish Grand Prix is scheduled to move to Barcelona as we climb aboard again with Alain Prost. Apparently the Olympic officials are not real wild about that idea. A racetrack is being built in the Barcelona area for 1992, and that's going to be an interesting story to watch develop. Incredibly fast right here. 160 miles an hour. Prost will pit. Sharp left-hander. Now let's see how quickly he goes down the pit lane with people everywhere. Take it away, John.
This could be a world champion pit stop here. If it goes well, Alain Prost may have an advantage going back on. The car's in the air. All four down. Trackman out in front of the car away. A very, very quick spot, and Terry Boutsen in. Just about flips about 4 or 5 Ferrari mechanics. Boutsen all 4 tires off. Revving the engine very high. Trouble with the left rear. Trouble with the left rear. Go, Terry, go. All right, we're waiting for the leader, Senna. And also one Benetton left as far as my count goes.
Well, the Ferrari and the Williams teams, it would seem, are on a very similar pit schedule. Mansell came in and nearly caught up Patrese. Prost came in, nearly caught up Terry Boutsen. And Senna having obvious trouble.
Senna having trouble here, and it's quite clear, too, from our Longies, which you don't have at home, that those people who have changed tyres are significantly quicker than those who have not. So I can't believe that Senna won't stop on this lap. The people with changed tyres are roughly 2 seconds a lap quicker than the ones who are still on the old tyre, or the first set of tyres.
An 11-second gap from Senna back to the new second-place car of Nelson Piquet is dwindling rapidly.
Well, he's coming through the last 2 right-hand sweeps now. This is when I would expect him to make his stop. Oh, God, that's what he doesn't need. Yes, here he goes. Again, just look at the speed of this car down the pit lane.
Here comes Senna to you, John.
Senna is coming to me. He's right in front of me now, the yellow helmet of the Brazilian, trying for this world championship. Every man here wanting that world championship. And the team a very quick pit stop. Congratulations, McLaren guys. No problem whatsoever.
And there goes Alain Prost past, and Nigel Mansell slows. Is he playing blocking back?
I don't think so. I think he had a problem. Gosh, that was just one of those things where everything happened at once.
So the electronic timing system still shows Senna leading, but that's obviously not the case. Alain Prost slipped by. The McLaren boys were quick, but not quick enough. About a 7-second pit stop for Ayrton Senna, but this man has assumed the lead. Now here's a look again. There from Prost's car as he slides past. Then Nigel chopped straight across behind him and almost took out Ayrton Senna. But Senna never looked back for a moment, drove right back underneath Mansell, and resumed in second place.
Well, it seemed like an awfully quick stop to me, that McLaren one, but obviously not quick enough.
There is Andre de Cesaris in the Dallara pits, and a big problem there. You can see he's wearing a neck brace, and he is unhappy. Brakes smoking at both front corners. De Cesaris was running in 14th position. Comes Alain Prost when he crosses the start-finish line.
Prost has pulled out a huge lead on Senna, too, in that one lap.
Senna's tires perhaps not quite up to snuff yet, up to temperature. Now we are showing Nelson Piquet is actually out front. I think we've been too McLaren and Ferrari oriented. Nelson Piquet must have gotten by Alain Prost before that whole business with Senna and Mansell, because Piquet is shown as our leader. And he has not stopped, so that might well figure. But Prost on fresh tires is 1.2 seconds behind, followed by Senna, Mansell, Berger, Nannini, Boutsen, Gugelmin, Patrese, Suzuki, Capelli, Martini, and Warwick. Those cars all remain on the lead lap.
Going through the back markers here on that lap, Senna must have come unglued with somebody, because the other guys all did 28s and 27s. He did a 133 for some reason or other. So something must have happened to him, which we didn't see.
Well, we expect any moment to see Nelson Piquet, the three-time world champion, bring in the Benetton, which I believe will complete pit stops for all of the front runners. Let's watch from Prost's car, heading down toward the pits in 2 more corners.
The Benetton going through these very fast right-handers extremely well. The match of the Ferrari, by the look of things there. The Ferrari makes up a bit of ground on braking. Always a bit hard to tell, though, just how much it really does. This is where the V8 should fall out compared to the 12, but as you can see, it seems to have equal performance up there. A lot of people thought that maybe Ford had made an error in developing this very expensive new V8 instead of a 10 or a 12.
Well, as joy breaks out in the Benetton pits, their man Nelson Piquet is out front, followed by Prost and Senna. More in a moment. Back to live action as Alain Prost continues to lead. This is where he needs to be to keep his title hopes alive, the defense of his world championship. It is Prost, followed by Senna, 4 seconds back. Nelson Piquet was running in third, but more on that in a moment. Nigel Mansell, Gerhard Berger, Sandro Nannini, Terry Boutsen, Maurizio Gugelmin, Riccardo Patrese, Ivan Capelli, Pierluigi Martini, Derek Warwick, Aguri Suzuki, and Nicola Larini are the last cars on the lead lap. Now let's take a look at what happened a moment ago to Nelson Piquet, who waited 1 lap too long to make his pit stop. Straight off the corner he went, and when he comes back on, you will see the car of Ayrton Senna come flashing by just to the left of your picture. There he is.
Which must have pinched Senna's corner badly, which would be part of the reason to explain he's a cool 6.6 seconds behind Alain Prost after just 3 laps of racing on their new tyres. So not very good. Prost has set the fastest lap of the race, a 26.1. Senna's last lap was a 28.6.
Getting very, very close to a record fast lap again.
But Prost at the moment in a class of his own on lap time. 2 seconds quicker than anybody else out there, including Mansell, Senna, or Berger.
A 126 for Prost. Everyone else, 28s, 29s, a 27 for Terry Boutsen. Let's get a comment from John Bisignano in the pit lane.
Well, Bob and David, PK was one of 2 drivers using the Goodyear tires that went out on the harder compound B. Now, usually when you do that, you try and go the whole race, but Goodyear told me that they suspected that he would still have to stop. Everyone, of course, was looking for him to lose adhesion. He goes off the track. The Benetton people get set up for him, but he stays back out there. He has not come in to change tires or have the car looked at. The tire warmers are back on. Also, the V8 can go very cleanly through the air. It's set up for low drag and, of course, carries less fuel, which means less weight. And that helps the straight line speed. But the Benetton team is a bit confused. They were all ready to see their driver in here, but he just keeps circling around.
Well, in fact, Nelson Piquet is holding down 3rd spot. He had enough of a gap that the only man he changed positions with was Ayrton Senna.
Of course, the other thing with the V8 does use a bit less fuel, so they can have a less or a lighter starting line weight. And of course, that helps that initial set of tires as well, which maybe in some places gives them the opportunity to go through the race without a change, and where others would have to change.
With 31 laps complete, Alain Prost's lead has now gone from 4 seconds to 6.6 to 8.1. No one is in a league with the Frenchman right now. We get the sense that Ferrari is a bit of an angry man behind the steering wheel of that Ferrari. All of the French newspapers had blaring headlines early in the week as Prost blasted the Ferrari team, saying they were not organized, they are not behind my world championship. I may quit before we go to Spain. But after a discussion with his team director, Cesare Fiorio,
and higher, he went right to the Fiat main board.
That's right.
And more or less told them at one stage, if one reads one's French right, that he told them it was either him or Fiorio. Well, that, as I said earlier, seems to have been sort of papered over at the very least, but how long it'll last, we don't know. He did say this morning there's going to have to be some more meetings during the winter, whatever that means.
Here comes Ayrton Senna in 2nd place, still using that middle of the track. Prost does have the use of the T-car the rest of the year, and it's probably a symbolic story of his relationship with Nigel Mansell at this point. Mansell told me, I've given up the team car. It was proper they should ask. It was proper that I should say yes. But you would think someone would tell me thank you, and he has not. A look down the crowded pit lane as Mauricio Gugelmin brings the Leighton house in for upkeep and a new set of Goodyear tires. Gugelmin and his teammate Ivan Capelli will be with the Leighton House team next year again. As the team begins its 5th year of existence, it'll be the 4th year with both of those drivers at the keyboard.
And, of course, a new engine, the Ilmor V10, designed and built by the same people in England who build the Chevrolet IndyCar engine. So that should be quite a potent threat as well.
It'll be interesting to see his name on it, too.
It will be interesting to see his name on it. We're told it will not be Chevrolet, but who knows. Senna is dropping back quite badly. He's nearly 10 seconds behind now. He's either got a problem, or he's just thinking, I'll let Prost take this one. As long as I come second, no worse, I still gain a net gain of points.
2 points he will gain if he can finish second, while Prost will keep his 9.
Right, so that would keep the gap still within livable form for the last 2 races. Flame out on the Ferrari. Is it getting worse, or is it been like that all the time? It's only on the overrun, I know, but
it certainly was a big burst that time. Alain Prost sat down with me for an interview on Friday in preparation for an upcoming ESPN year-end Formula One special. And the first thing he asked me was, how is A.J. Foyt? After Supertex's big crash in the IndyCar race last year, I told him everything I knew, that A.J. is mending. So A.J., if you're watching, the world champion gives you his best. With that, we'll take a quick time out. You're driving with one of the greatest drivers in the history of Formula One. We'll see how he does when we return to Spain. Flamenco, for my money, the sexiest form of dance in the world, and all the clapping and the guitars and the singing and so forth. The pictures were taken, incidentally, at our hotel on the beach, not far from Jerez in Rota, Spain. Those of you familiar with the U.S. space program can remember the days when every launch from Cape Kennedy was handed over to the tracking station in Rota. Well, we're just down the street. We are approaching halfway in the Spanish Grand Prix, working lap 36. At the end, we will be officially at halfway. Alain Prost, this man is your leader in search of his 5th victory of the season and a chance to move up a little bit in the hopes of defending his world championship. It is Prost by 13 seconds at this point over Ayrton Senna, followed by Nelson Piquet 6 seconds further back, and still has not pitted. Nigel Mansell a second and a half behind Piquet, then Berger 4 seconds back, Nannini less than a second behind Berger at this point. Boutsen 4 seconds further adrift, followed 6 seconds later by his teammate Riccardo Patrese, and Ivan Capelli a fat 11 seconds further in arrears. Should the race end in this position, Ayrton Senna will gain 2 points for a total of 80 on the season. Prost will gain 9 for a total of 69, and the gap will decrease from 18, obviously, to 11, and the battle will move on to Japan on October 21st. And you'll see that race here on ESPN. Here is Senna, approaching turn 1, also known as Expo 92. I mentioned a moment ago that AJ had an accident. Of course, it wasn't last year. It was a week ago. A big crash at Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin.
Well, Senna's sweeping through the chicane there, but he is slipping back. He's down now to 14.5-second deficit.
And still, Alain Prost continues to lap at under a minute and 27 seconds per lap. Nobody close. More than a half second a lap away is Nigel Mansell running 4th right now in another Ferrari. Riccardo Patrese lapping quickly at 127.6. And Aguri Suzuki has now weighed in with a 127.1. So Alain Prost is just a class of this field as we ride with Ayrton Senna.
Senna lapping in the mid-28s. Vastly different. Prost did throw the gauntlet down this morning. The writing was on the wall. He was over a second quicker in the morning warm-up, which is a pretty good foretelling of how the day is going to go usually, because they try and go with full tanks and this sort of thing, although you're never quite sure.
Still with plenty of tearaways on the visor of his helmet. Ayrton Senna has been absolutely magnificent this weekend. He was one of the drivers who climbed from his car to see if they could assist Martin Donnelly after his horrendous accident on Friday. He walked away in tears from that accident. You got to look at Yannick Dalmas and the AGS there. Senna then climbed into his car, and when the session was restarted about 50 minutes to an hour later, he went out and broke his own lap record. Afterward, he said, "There are not words to describe the way I felt." To break his own record after a moment like that. Here's John Visignano in the pit lane.
You know, Bob, another person who was very affected by that accident, of course, was teammate Derek Warwick. Now, he came out in that session after the red flag was taken away. He moved from 14th up to 10th on the grid, and in the next session, he actually gained a couple more places. So Derek closed off his mind, put down his visor, said, "There's nothing wrong with my car. Everything's okay, and I'm here to go racing." He actually had the option of not to race the car on Sunday and not to qualify it on Saturday, but he's 100% driver. He's also 100% football player. He scored 2 goals playing against the press here yesterday. So Derek Warwick very relaxed about the situation as far as reliability at Lotus. He must have some confidence in him.
Well, Derek has often said if he couldn't be a race driver, the one thing in his life he'd like to do is take the field at Wembley Stadium to play soccer for England. There is Nigel Mansell lapping in 4th position, but it is an 18-second gap now from 1st to 2nd, Prost to Senna. Kaz for the opportunity to show you his pictures. Don't forget to start your NFL football watching day with ESPN NFL Game Day. The first word at noon Eastern Time, a new time. Chris Berman hosts the show with Pete Axthelm and Tom Jackson. NFL Game Day coming your way at noon live here on ESPN. We are at the Spanish Grand Prix in Jerez de la Frontera. You are riding with the championship leader, Ayrton Senna of Brazil, in the traditional helmet of green and black and yellow, the colors of his native Brazil. but he has a serious problem at this point. He is running second to his title rival, Alain Prost of France, who is leading him substantially, and now he is in danger of losing second place to Nelson Piquet and Nigel Mansell.
Piquet and Mansell making a lot of ground up on Senna. I don't know what... Senna's now at 23 seconds, nearly 24 seconds behind Alain Prost. He must have some sort of problem with the car and has decided to tough it out as opposed to stop and have it re-looked at. On the other hand, he may think that with another 30-odd laps to go, he'll squeeze another 3 or 4 out of it before he changes tyres again. Possibly he's got a duff set of tyres, but it seems more than that somehow.
32 laps remain. We're working lap number 41 of 73 right now. There's a good look at Nigel. There is Ayrton Senna. The picture is coming to you from Spanish television.
But Alain Prost does seem to be in a league of his own. He's lapping consistently in the 26s, 1 minute 26 seconds, that is. Everybody else is lapping in the 1 minute 28s, including Senna, but even he only gets in there every now and then. And Berger and Mansell are hovering around in the 28s and 29s. So Prost has really done the magic to his car here, there's no doubt about it. And that's why Prost has won over 40 races, because he is the professor by name and by nature. He was clever enough when he moved to Ferrari to take Steve Nichols with him as his engineer, and I think that Steve Nichols had worked with him for a number of years at McLaren, and they certainly seem to be working very well together at Ferrari.
The gap is now 24 seconds from Alain Prost back to Ayrton Senna, and right here come third and fourth virtually in lockstep. Three-time world champion Nelson Piquet and Nigel Mansell, winner of 16 Formula One races. The most recent, of course, just last Sunday in Portugal.
Mansell right behind Senna now.
And Mansell goes under Piquet. An easy pass for Nigel Mansell. Piquet must be down to the absolute cords on those tires. Let's get down to John Bizignano for an update.
Actually, the Benetton team is all set up and expecting their three-time world champion in the pit momentarily. He has to be out of tires. He went out on the Bs, but anyway, he has to be used them up by now. Very quickly, out of race. John Alesi went out in the first corner with a crash. Pedro went out with a stuck throttle cable. Tarquini went out with an electrical problem, followed by a spin. Modena, he has gone out with being punted off by Mr. Dalmas. There's going to be a discussion about that when Mr. Dalmas comes in. Nakajima spun off Bernard, a gearbox. Alio, another spin for the Frenchman. De Cesaris, he is in the race, but he had a very long pit stop where they changed the battery. Tire warmers off here in Benetton. You may have to give it right back to me, guys.
And I think that Nigel Mansell has gone around... no, he hasn't. There's Nigel Mansell making ground on Ayrton Senna up the main straight here.
That was Ayrton, that was Andre De Cesaris, who's 2 laps down. 18 cars remain running, 14 of them on the lead lap. There's
Luigi Marcini in the sand there too, we just had a glimpse of.
Make that 17 car still ring. Then here is Piquet now for his long-awaited pit stop. Let's get back down to John.
We're trying to see exactly what kind of condition the tires are in. The left front has definitely been used very hard. It's picked up a lot of a little elbow chop.
He's turned it off.
Here. The engine has stopped. Looking around, they are taking the engine cover off. Nelson Piquet trying to communicate through his headset. Team manager now talking to him back and forth. A great deal of communication going on. Engine cover coming off. We have about 12 Zeus fasteners to get loose here. Nelson Piquet, fantastic drive, leading this race at one point, wiping the visor. He shut this, a major problem. We'll get back to you with the details as soon as they could become available.
And he's not getting out of the car, so evidently Nelson Piquet has a notion to get back into this one. What a leaderboard. Prost, Senna, Mansell, Berger now moves up into the 4th position, followed by Sandro Nannini and the other Benetton, Terry Boutsen and Ricardo Patrese. More in a moment. Welcome back to the Spanish Grand Prix here on ESPN. Here's John Bizignano with a track fact.
There is one piece of very important required safety equipment for every Formula One car that is rarely connected. In case of a fire, the FIA requires each car to have an air bottle on board. They're usually located right down in the cockpit area. Now, in case of a fire, this air bottle will supply via this tube fresh air directly into the driver's helmet. That's the advantage. The disadvantage is that that same air could also feed the fire itself. Formula One drivers are very safety conscious, and each competitor up and down this pit lane has had to make his own choice to connect or disconnect this piece of important safety equipment. The vast majority of drivers have chosen not to use it. They think this safety equipment is far too dangerous to be used, and the FIA is considering deleting the regulation for 1991.
Well, that situation with Gerhard Berger at Imola, Italy a year ago was certainly as big as a disaster as I'd ever choose to see in racing. His helmet, incidentally, was tested afterward, and it was found that if he had sat in those flames for another 5 seconds, the outcome might have been much more catastrophic than it was. Let's get more from John.
We have Nelson Piquet's left front tire here. This is the one that takes all the wear. As you can see, it's actually in pretty good shape. We thought there'd be more wear than that. All that rubber was actually just being picked up. McLaren has just entered the pits. Take it from the high camera, Bob.
It is Gerhard Berger making his second pit stop. We were warned before the race by the engineers at Goodyear that they may require 2 stops of their team. Now, we have seen that cars on fresh tires go much more quickly than those who have old rubber, so we may see Gerhard Berger come flying back to this field. He has now dropped back down to 7th position.
Of course, we could also see a difference in the mix of the tire. We could go from a B to a C, for instance. Senna now coming under pressure from Nigel Mansell, right behind him as they go through that hairpin.
Much as Senna and Prost did after the Italian Grand Prix at Monza about a month ago, Nigel Mansell has buried the hatchet after a long-time feud with Ayrton Senna. They talked at great length, shook hands, and walked away from a feud that has actually gone a great deal longer than just about any other that I know of. Ayrton and Nigel have been coming together for years.
Watch them through this very quick complex here. Ferrari just changed a little bit right towards the end of it. It also seems to pick up a bit on brakes, because it's very difficult to tell on braking whether you're really making any serious ground, because a second gap's a second gap. Now here's a guy who's not caring about brakes or gaps or anything else, because he's a cool 30 seconds in front of the rest of the field.
But he will no doubt be interested in what is going on behind him, because if his teammate Nigel Mansell, as strange, and because he has his 11 points finishes, and the lowest of them is a third, he will net no points from this race. So instead of picking up 2 points net for second place, he would be back to no points in third place. He would remain on 78 points, while Prost, with a possible victory, would move up to 69. So the computations continue in a great race here in Spain, working the 47th of 73 laps.
Which, of course, will make a huge difference to the picture going into Japan and Australia.
Two very strong-willed drivers on a track that brooks no mistakes in passing. As friendly as Nigel and Ayrton might have become, I'm sure they remember what happened in Hungary a few races back, when Berger knocked Nigel off the racetrack trying to pass at an untoward moment. Senna knocked Sandro Nannini through the air and off the racetrack, after which McLaren team manager Ron Dennis was called on the carpet by the sanctioning body and told to order his drivers to back off.
Turn 1 complex, where we saw poor old Alesi pushed out right at the first time round.
Prost has added to his lead, now 31.9 seconds, now lapping at 126.8. No one else within 0.7 of a second.
Except Gerhard Berger on his new tyres, who's just cranked out a 126.6, which is by far his fastest race lap.
Of course, at this point, he is almost a full minute down to the leader Prost, so what's a couple of tenths between friends? Yeah. Notice that empty grandstand in the back. No tickets were sold for that grandstand. They have had crowd problems here for a number of years in Spain, which may explain in part why they're considering taking it to Barcelona in a couple of years' time. Prost getting under Alboreto there without incident, completing lap 48. And just to show you what slowing for a slower car like that can do. That lap by Prost was a 1:29. Slow car to the right. I didn't get a close look at it.
I think it was Brouillard in there.
Brouillard of the Osella.
Here comes our second and third place men, and they're now well over half a minute behind.
30.4 seconds. They've actually brought the lead down by a few tenths. There is Brouillard. The Osella team has been very vocal in their anger with the Pirelli tire people. The Osella team is convinced that as something less than a first-tier team, as they park it and switch it off, that they are not getting Pirelli's best. The battle continues for second place in the Spanish Grand Prix. Ayrton Senna and Nigel Mansell. Mansell hoping to pass Senna and give a boost to his teammate, the leader, Alain Prost. Don't forget, coming up later tonight, a change of time over that previously announced at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. Same-day coverage of the NASCAR Winston Cup Tyson Holly Farms 400 from North Wilkesboro, North Carolina. Bob Jenkins, Benny Parsons, Ned Jarrett, and the boys will be there to bring you that great Winston Cup battle between Mark Martin, Dale Earnhardt, and, of course, the supporting cast in the best stock car racing anywhere. 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific Time here on ESPN. Nelson Piquet went back out to the Spanish Grand Prix, turned a few laps, and then brought the car back in. It would appear that his day is done. Meanwhile, Alain Prost leads, working lap 51 of 73. Let's get more on Nelson Piquet now from John in the pit lane.
Nelson Piquet moves out of the Benetton car into the garage with the fraternity of mechanics around him. An excellent drive by the Brazilian. The first stop was so lengthy because they changed the battery. The battery had gone flat. To explain that to Chris Economaki fans, that means that it died on him. They went and put a new battery back into the car, and obviously there's something draining the life electricity out of the Benetton today. Nelson Piquet, he is a very sad man after leading the Spanish Grand Prix back in the motorhome. We'll try and chat with him in a moment.
Well, there are other guys out there with problems. Ricardo Patrese brought the Williams in a few moments ago, and here is how every driver hopes a pit stop will not happen. He came in 6th place, and then the nightmare begins. Watch that left front corner. Take the old wheel nut off, put another one on. And meanwhile, Alain Prost, our leader, is in the pits in real time. Thus far, a very smooth pit stop. No burning rubber until he gets up to, maybe middle of the rev range in first gear. And he had the field in hand by half a minute, so he should be in pretty good shape.
Be able to stop comfortably in that period of time, and here you see the second and third spot cars coming along. The gap reduced considerably now to Prost, but of course there you see smoke pouring out of the right front of Senna's car. That explains, he's probably got a brake problem.
I think it's an engine problem. The engine is going away on Senna's car. Andre de Cesaris brings the Dallara in. But the real drama is up in second place. Ayrton Senna is in grave danger, it would appear, of coming out of this race with no points at all. And as I say, of course, the smoke disappears. There it is again, by the right rear wheel. Mansell holding station. I would think he might want to drop back a little bit. Oh, there must be fluid coming out. Senna can't keep the car going. He waves Mansell by on the right side.
Well, Senna's day is done by the look of things.
And he's going to climb right down in front of Nannini.
He doesn't seem to think it is done. I can't believe he can't see all that stuff coming out. Maybe he can't.
That looks much like what happened to him at Monza last year when fluid started to come out of the side, and the next thing he knew, he snap-spun it in the final corner. There's another look at Mansell going by, and I'll watch what the McLaren does. He chops right down what Nigel was thinking of, going very slowly there. And Senna inserted himself in front of Nannini. Protecting Mansell, they couldn't be that close friends in a week.
There he goes into the pits. Nannini. Of course, now we don't know what is over the front of Nannini's car. Probably can't see very well at the moment.
John Bizignano is in the McLaren pit.
Ayrton Senna very quickly brings the car in. It almost looks like they're just set up for a routine pit into the car. That is not normal, and I'm afraid to tell you, folks, that the mechanics only saw it when he left the pit lane. Let's see what happens.
Well, I think the officials have seen it, and there may be a black flag in Ayrton Senna's future. Working lap 53, 20 remaining. Let's see if we can get any idea by listening to Ayrton Senna's car. The audio quality from our in-car camera is not what we'd like it to be at this point. We apologize for that. But Ayrton Senna must be skating on thin ice out there.
He obviously thought his handling problems were due to his tires going away, whereas in fact it was due to all that fluid coming out on the rear. And let's hope the thing doesn't just blow up on him going through one of these very fast sweeps.
There is Nigel Mansell with a big burst of flame out the exhaust of the Ferrari, running in second position now. Here comes Sandro Nannini, who after being balked a bit by Senna as he slowed, seems to be making time once again. Mansell is dropping back from Prost. He is now 21.8 seconds in arrears. Prost turned that last lap at 1:25.1, a new record. I take that back. Nelson Piquet, before he left the race, had set fast lap at 1:25.09. And he is now out of the event, so Prost still has a shot at it. But more important, I'm sure, would be the victory. So now it is a Ferrari 1-2. The bells are ringing, no doubt, in Modena, and Senna has parked it. I believe he's at the start-finish line. He's on the pit exit. And that has a tremendous impact on the points. He will score no points today. If Alain Prost can carry on and win, the gap will be cut in half from 18 to 9 points with 2 races to go.
And that is so unlike the McLaren Honda. The one thing that they really have had going for them ever since Honda have been back in Formula One has been the unbelievable reliability of their engines. They've got the most power, the most torque, the best economy, and they've also had by far and away the best reliability. So I suppose as a driver you've just got to expect it to happen every now and then.
Senna dropped out while running in 6th position. Let's get more from John Bizignano in the pit lane.
David and Bob, I've got to tell you, the McLaren boys had no idea of this fluid problem when the car came in. All they did was do a normal tire stop. They had no idea that the problem was there, and they do have television screens. They should have been aware of it. He only made 1 lap, didn't even actually complete a lap successfully before the spewing water. I put my hands in it. It was very hot, and it felt like cooling fluid, water mixed with some type of coolant. But they paid the price. Ayrton Senna, walking back to our position, will try and get his views on what happened.
Well, Senna went out and put the spurs to the car as you watch Sandro Nannini circulating. Senna went out and set fast lap. That has since been eclipsed by Riccardo Patrese, who sets a new record with a 1:24.5. Here is Sandro Nannini, who is now in 3rd position. Let's reset the order. Prost, Mansell, Nannini, Boutsen, Berger, and Patrese in the 6th and final points-paying position. Tough day for Ayrton Senna. This picture may be the pivotal moment in the 1990 Formula One season when all is said and done. In the red overall, sitting on the pit wall, Ayrton Senna, who came into this race, the Spanish Grand Prix, with an 18-point lead in the championship over Alain Prost. The engine is gone in his McLaren Honda. If Prost, who is now leading, can win the race, Senna's lead will be cut to 9 with 2 races remaining. No matter what happens, it has been a dramatic race. Here is Sandro Nannini of Benetton, shown in 3rd position right now. Of the 25 starters, 14 cars remain in the race, and a pretty miraculous 10 of those on the lead lap.
And Sandro Nannini willing himself now to get past Nigel Mansell, because there's been a lot of stories this week in the press again over here about the way he feels he was very shabbily treated by Ferrari, offered him a contract, and he now thinks that it was just a ploy to try and prize John Alesi away from Tyrrell by saying to the world that he, Nannini, was going to drive for them. And he's feeling very bitter about Ferrari at the moment, so nothing would give him greater pleasure than to whistle by old Nige.
Of course, Alesi had actual signed contracts with several teams, and he is not the only driver that has done so in the last year. And there is a rumor that steps will be taken legislatively to make sure that that does not happen in the future. There is Terry Bootson, one of the drivers who will be moving on next year. He to Ligier. Right behind him is Gerhard Berger, and that's the battle for 4th place.
Now, Gerhard Berger needs to get some points, because at the top of the show you were talking about the Constructors' Championship, and Berger, to keep their hopes alive, needs to score some points for McLaren here.
There is Ayrton Senna. The difference was 33 points in the Constructors' Championship coming in. You score all points for both cars, so right now Ferrari with a 1-2 is in a position to make up tremendous ground on McLaren in the Constructors' Championship. So it is certain that the drivers' battle will continue on to Japan and Australia. Oh, Berger looks under, and
the biter is bit. That's exactly what he tried to do in Hungary just a few weeks ago. Only this time the tables were turned, and it was him that was tipped out of the race, which really points out the failure of people who are trying to say that this is a deliberate attempt to push the other driver off, because you never know which way it's going to work. There was an open door, there was a bit of an opportunity, but he was too far behind. Runs over the front wheel of Thierry. Let's hope it hasn't deranged the front suspension on that Williams too badly.
And that's an example of what happens when cars touch wheels, when rubber meets rubber at a slow speed. Even at a speed that slow, the McLaren absolutely launched.
That's Berger out.
And that is Berger out of the race, so McLaren will score no driver points as well as manufacturer points here today. Well, one driver walks down one end of the pit lane, the other driver comes down the other end. Not the finest hour for the McLaren boys this weekend.
Uncle Ron Dennis will not be a happy boy back in the motorhome after this. I need a listening device put in there at once.
With a filter.
Yeah, with a 6-second delay.
So you can bleep the important words. 58 laps complete. We are working lap number 59. There is Derek Warwick in the remaining Lotus.
Mansell's just got around Warwick, but Warwick actually is cranking off some pretty good laps of his own, just under 127.1, showing very well, and no doubt this is a bit of a stressful race for him, because that was an awful crash that his teammate had, and it was almost certainly precipitated by a breakage in that chassis before the race, or during the practice. So Warwick, in the back of his mind, it'd be hard for him not to think about that.
There is Ayrton Senna taking refuge among the banks and banks of Honda engineers' computers. Progress of his teammate, Berger, who is about to walk into the garage right behind him. Working lap 59, it is Prost and Mansell, Ferrari, followed by Sandro Nannini. Prost and Mansell's gap bounces down to 19 seconds, up to 20 seconds, and back down again.
Berger was obviously quicker than Thierry Boutsen. He had caught him up from a long way back, and I think he would have been far better have done to have waited till they got here to turn 1. Made a really good job of the last turn, come off the turn quick, and stayed with Boutsen all the way up the straight, and he could have nailed him going into turn 1. But easy to say that sitting here.
Gerhard Berger is quickly developing a reputation as someone who has a habit of picking the wrong corner to make the decisive move. Nigel Mansell takes a bit of a filicking as he makes his way down into turn 1.
22 seconds behind his teammate Prost, but a nice 4-second cushion back to Nannini in the Benetton.
I saw a possible wisp of blue smoke out of the back of the Benetton. I'll have to catch up with Nannini in a moment.
Into the chicane. Big bump there on exit. And there's Mr. Berger joining in too.
The attrition beginning to catch up with everyone. We are down to 11 cars remaining in the race. 7 of those on the lead lap. Prost, Mansell, Nannini, Boutsen, Catrese, Gugelmin, Suzuki, Warwick, Capelli, Marini, Dalmas, and Alboreto, the remaining runners in the Spanish Grand Prix. Coming up later this Sunday and every Sunday here on ESPN, NFL Game Day with Chris Berman, Pete Axome, and Tom Jackson, giving you all the news. Marsha, David Hobbs, and John Bisignano with you at the Spanish Grand Prix as you watch Nicola Larini bring his Ligier back onto the racetrack after a second pit stop. There is Sandro Nannini in the Benetton, who is just driving the decals off of that car. This is where I saw a puff of blue smoke earlier, but I guess that's not the case. Nannini runs third. It is Prost, Mansell, Nannini, Boutsen, Patrese, Gugelmin, Suzuki, Warwick, Larini, Capelli, Dalmas, Alboreto.
Capelli in the pits there. Looks like a fairly relaxed tire change, so he's obviously got a problem getting out of the car.
Well, I'm not going to do the leaderboard over again. We have 11 laps remaining this time around. There once again is Nannini. A 25.8-second gap from first to second, Prost to Mansell. Then 4 seconds back to Nannini, 11 seconds back to Boutsen, 27 seconds back to Patrese. Cars remain in the race. Capelli was running in 10th when he suffered his problem.
Prost serenely pulling away from his teammate. It's a thing that he's done 43 times previously, won races, but still in all, with so much at stake, especially today, it just makes you wonder what's going through his mind and what noises he's hearing and little rattles and the odd fault in the engine and a little bump that he didn't think was there before as he reels these laps off to try and win this race and put himself in, frankly, a very strong position for the World Championship, because I think the Ferraris would also go extremely well in Suzuka. I'm not quite so sure about Adelaide. That is more of a point and squirt circuit, and I think the Honda engine has definitely got more squirt, but it puts it down well.
Capelli being lifted out of that car. I hope that's a cramp. Many of the drivers have been suffering from leg cramps this weekend. Some of them have had their drink bottle systems go awry, so they've been out of fluid during sessions. Capelli appeared to be in a bit of a bad way.
Well, it is extremely hot here. Very easy for a driver to have heat exhaustion. As you can see, even in these open cockpit cars, the sun just shines right down on your head and your lap where it can get at it. So you get extremely hot in these cars. And, of course, you dehydrate at a tremendous rate because those suits soak up the sweat like blotting paper, and you sweat profusely. And, of course, that's the sort of thing that brings cramp on, because you just lose all the salt and all those acids and other highly important body fluids go away. And runners, joggers, marathon runners get cramp, and there's no reason why it shouldn't happen to race drivers, and it does.
Marathon runners don't do it with a layer of underwear, followed by a 3-layer fire suit, a balaclava over your face, a helmet on your head, gloves on your hands, shoes on your feet, and an engine ticking along at some 100 degrees right behind the back of your neck.
Now, we've seen on Bill Elliott's car in NASCAR, where a cockpit temperature is up around about 130, or down by your legs and feet, it'd be the same in these cars.
10 laps remaining. Nigel Mansell, I believe, or is that Prost, running with Derek Warwick, who is a lap car. You're on board with Prost.
Part of the driver fatigue comes about making those gear shifts. Very small movements, and they're very precise and very easy on these Formula One cars, but this on the Ferrari is even easier, so that is just another little thing that chips away at the time as the race goes on, and one of those little things that can really help a driver.
An electronically actuated, an electronically signaled, hydraulically actuated, semi-automatic 7-speed gearbox. Quite frankly, it had people shaking their heads when it was introduced a year ago.
Well, it had Nigel shaking his head mostly because it broke all the time. And of course, Gerhard Berger went through, what, a 14-race streak where he didn't finish a race, let alone win one.
Of course, Nigel won the first time out with it in Brazil at Rio last year.
Kind of sheer blind luck, I think.
Derek Warwick's day has come to an end.
He's pulling off. Where is he? He must be just past the end of the pit lane, too.
Just past the pit exit. So a tough weekend all around for the Lotus team. And of course, our thoughts are with Martin Donnelly, the 26-year-old Irish driver who had a titanic crash here on Friday during the first round of qualifying. And frankly, the press corps here shook heads in disbelief when we were told that he had in fact survived the crash. Everyone, to a man and a woman, thought the worst had happened to Martin Donnelly. But despite a badly broken leg. Breaks in both legs, broken collarbone, broken cheekbone, bruised lung, and a severe concussion. Martin Donnelly is awake and alert, has had surgery for his broken legs, and the doctors say his chances look good right now.
He's a little too fast, Sweet. Prost lifting less slightly now than he was even at the beginning of the race with that full fuel load and didn't want to run his tyres off, even though he's got a 25-second lead. Driving well within himself and the capabilities of cars. No good relaxing at this point too much and just saying, oh, well, we've got 25-second lead out. You've got to be very, very careful how you drive when you have a big lead like this.
It has been an expensive weekend. Broken race cars, broken engines, and not least of all the tires. We've used a lot. 2 pit stops for most of the teams at $1,800 a set. We'll be back. Breathtaking circuit, Suzuka. We'll hope you'll join us for that race here on ESPN. Alain Prost winding it down here in Spain. He has lengthened his lead by 1 second now to 26 seconds over Nigel Mansell. Ricardo Patrese still in possession of the quick lap of the race at 124.5, nearly a second under the previous best. Interesting to be in the Ferrari garage once all this is over. Perhaps the team management will be telling Alain Prost, see, I told you we had everything in order. And Alain Prost will be saying back to them, see, I told you when you did what I said, everything would be all right.
Yeah. Of course, he still feels aggrieved that he could have come at least 1 place higher last week in Estoril, and there's no doubt about it that start line incident cost him dearly, because ironically he had said just before the race to win here at Estoril you've got to start on the front 2 rows. It's very minimum, the second row.
4 laps remaining for Alain Prost, en route perhaps to his 44th career Formula One victory. Live from Spain, take a close look at that hillside and you'll see that there are fences and stairs built into it. That was once a grandstand across from the pit area here in Jerez, Spain. The organizers have covered it with dirt and branches to make it look like it was never there. The crowd's not what they might be here at the Spanish Grand Prix. And why not when a weekend pass runs you 20,000 Spanish pesetas, about $208 at the latest exchange rate. In fact, to bring in a toddler would cost you $31. To bring in a babe in arms, $26. That may go a long way toward explaining the crowds here. We have 2 laps remaining this time around for Alain Prost, who has led the race since taking over from Ayrton Senna. And there has been action aplenty here today in Spain. While I was on the subject of babies, I'd like to congratulate one of our former producers here on ESPN coverage of Formula One, Jeff Hallis. He and wife Liz welcomed Matthew James Hallis into the world last Monday, 7 pounds, 11 ounces. Jeff and Liz's second child, so they obviously have no one to blame but themselves.
Wins is a pretty staggering statistic. He and Ayrton Senna between them have definitely got the class of the field here with 44 wins. That puts him way clear of Jackie Stewart, of course, is next with 27. And of course, Senna himself is waiting for the day when he can chalk up his 27th win, which will be his next win, will be his 27th, and he will equal Jackie Stewart and be second to Prost. But instead of that, of course, he's got 50 pole positions. Pole certainly seems to be his forte. And yesterday afternoon was absolutely mind-blowing. And the day before, too, when he set his original, he was fastest on Friday. Broke it again yesterday. And Friday was immediately after the accident to Donnelly. And he had been down there looking at the scene, looking at Donnelly lying crumpled in the road. The whole thing was terribly harrowing. And he just got in the car and turned his mind to what he had to do. Quite extraordinary performance.
And yet the record for fast laps belongs to this man, Alain Prost, who, it might be argued, knows how to save it for race day. Ricardo Patrese still has fast lap for this race, and it appears he will not be beaten for it. That will be Patrese's 7th career fast lap, which moves him out of a massive tie for 25th on the all-time list into a tie for 23rd with some pretty heady company, Jacques Lafitte and Gilles Villeneuve. We are on the last lap here in Spain. A lap, no doubt, fraught with all sorts of ghosts and gremlins nipping at the heels of the French professor himself, Alain Prost. If we chose to write a scenario for the final 3 races of the Formula One season here on ESPN, we certainly couldn't do any better than this. Ayrton Senna, unfortunately, will not be here to battle to the end. He will score no points today, and his championship lead will go from a pretty breathtaking 18 points to a very, very manageable 9 on behalf of Alain Prost.
Prost swinging through the corners, take his time. There's Fiorio on the right. Middle right.
And the fellow with the microphone, desperate for that interview. I hope he plans to speak Italian.
The whole Ferrari pit crew exiting en masse to the pit wall to give Prost the thumbs up.
The bells will ring in the church steeples in Maranello. It is a Ferrari 1-2, and despite all of the bad words bitten back and forth in the newspapers over the last week, it has been a splendid week for Ferrari as Alain Prost follows teammate Nigel Mansell's victory in Portugal with one of his own a week later in Spain. Prost over Mansell. Sandro Nannini will apparently finish 3rd, followed by Terry Boutsen, Riccardo Patrese, and the very happy Aguri Suzuki. 10 cars still running at the end of the race. Fast lap goes to Riccardo Patrese, his 53rd of 73 laps, a new record, 124.5. There is the red number 2 of Nigel Mansell. Here comes Sandro Nannini. The margin of victory, 22.064 seconds, with a nice leisurely lap at 1 minute 33 seconds the last time around.
Well, he certainly didn't want to wear out the machinery or break it on that last lap. There you see the Ferrari pit crew going wild.
And the fellow in the middle with the khaki shirt is a former Ferrari mechanic who has seen some days of glory with the Scuderia. There's Riccardo Patrese, bringing home a few precious points for the Williams team. But there is the man of the moment, Alain Prost, who is suddenly very much a factor with a shot at his 4th World Championship, if he can overcome Ayrton Senna in the 2 races still to come. Victorious Alain Prost pulls into the pit lane en route to victory lane. The Ferrari team awaits the winner of the Spanish Grand Prix. ESPN Speed World coverage of the Formula One Grand Prix of Spain has been brought to you by Quaker State. The Big Q is one tough motor oil. By Alpine Car Audio Systems and your authorized Alpine dealer. Alpine, standard equipment in every Lamborghini made. By Bud Light, everything else is just a light. And by Acura Automobiles, experience precision-crafted performance. There you can read the joy on the faces of the yellow-shirted Ferrari crew. That is Cesare Fiorio, the very man of whom Alain Prost had so little to say earlier in this week. Now all smiles.
Hugging on pit lane there, whereas earlier this week he was calling for Fiorio's resignation, but things change, I suppose, and there's Nigel Mansell pulling into the pit, no doubt relatively happy with his 2nd position. It's going to be so interesting to see what happens next week. Are we going to hear an announcement from Nigel Mansell that he is in fact going to join the Williams team? It seems to be very probable that we are.
Nigel pulls his car into the post-race technical impound, followed by Sandro Nannini. And you can see a Ferrari flag or 2, a red Ferrari hat. There, the grandstands, lots of Ferrari hats. Forza Ferrari, the Tifosi, the legendary Ferrari fans. We have seen them from Phoenix in the United States to Sao Paulo, Brazil, all across Europe, with 8 races in the space of 12 weeks at one point.
All the Brazilian flags, of course, furled now, which we saw lots of at the beginning of the race, but we don't see many Brazilian flags out there now. Alain Prost having a well-deserved drink.
Let's take a look at
needed drink, I think.
One would think so, with the temperature at about 90 degrees. Here's a look at the cars that finished the race in their scoring order. Alain Prost, the winner by 22 seconds over Nigel Mansell in a Ferrari 1-2. The Benetton of Sandro Nannini, 12 seconds behind Mansell in 3rd. 4th, Terry Boutsen, and 5th, Riccardo Patrese in the Williams cars. In 6th, Aguri Suzuki in the LaRousse Lamborghini, followed by Nicola Larini, Mauricio Gugelmin, Yannick Dalmas, and Michele Alboreto brings the footwork arrows home in the 10th and final scored position. We'll take a quick timeout and be back to summarize the impact of this dramatic race on the points for both drivers and manufacturers. Stay with us. Nigel Mansell in the red Ferrari uniform makes his way to the staircase that will take him to the podium, reserved for the top 3 drivers.
Gives you an idea of how fit he is, too, the way he's taking those stairs there, just jogging up there like a sprightly young thing after 73 laps around here in 90-degree heat.
Let's take a look at the impact on driver points of today's race. Prost's victory pulls him within 9 points of Ayrton Senna for the Drivers' World Championship. Senna with 78, Prost with 69, although he will have to begin dropping points from this point forward. Gerhard Berger in 3rd with 40, followed by Nigel Mansell with 31, one more than Terry Boutsen. Nelson Piquet in 6th with 26 points. In the Manufacturers' Championship, McLaren Honda remain on 118 points. After both cars failed to finish the race today, Ferrari zooms up to 100 points. That battle obviously far from finished, followed by Williams, Renault, Benetton, and Tyrrell. Alain Prost and Nigel Mansell give each other a somewhat arm's-length hug, but I'm sure their sentiment is sincere. With that, let's get down to the pit lane for a final comment from John Bisignano.
Prost and Nigel Mansell, 2 of the most sincere people I have ever met on the pit road, that's for sure. I think 2 more races to go, and as you said, Bob, both the Constructors' Championship and the Drivers' Championship are wide open. The Suzuka Circuit in Japan and the track in Adelaide do not absolutely condone themselves to the McLaren setup. Look for the Renaults of the Williams cars to do very well there, and of course the Ferraris are going to be going for the world title. This ends our European swing, 14 of 16 races down, and we lose the Baudam video people here from Holland who have helped us so much. Thank you very much, everyone in the pit road, for service over and beyond the call of duty. Back to you, Bobby.
Thank you, John. David, your final thoughts on the race?
Well, it was just an absolute classic Professor Prost win. Right from the word go, he looked in control and in command, and of course he was very much, and it was added by a bit of luck to Senna's going out.
Congratulations on a Ferrari 1-2. Our next stop, as John mentioned, will be the Grand Prix of Japan, Sunday, October 21st, coming to you at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. We hope you'll join us for that. Just 2 races remain in the World Championship. It is going to be a spectacular